What's the dumbest thing your ex did that you ignored at the time because you were ignorantly in love? I was in my first real relationship in college, completely new to the whole dating someone seriously thing. I remember it being exciting, confusing, and completely consuming at the same time. Everything she said felt important. Every opinion she had carried weight. And I found myself agreeing with her on things I probably shouldn't have. I think that's how love works when it's young and untested. You overlook things that don't make sense because the person saying them feels like the center of your universe. One afternoon, we were driving across campus, stuck behind a car that was moving painfully slow. I mean snail-pace slow. Just creeping along like every other driver had disappeared from the planet. I started muttering under my breath, frustrated at the speed. I expected a little nod, maybe a sympathetic groan from her. Instead, she said something that I remember perfectly, even now. "You can't go less than 1 mile per hour. I blinked at her, not sure I had heard correctly. "What do you mean?" I asked, because logically, cars can go slower than 1 mile per hour if they're inching along in traffic or stopping and starting. She looked at me like I was the confused one. "There's nothing less than 1 except for 0, she said. "You can't go less than 1 mile per hour. I wanted to argue to say, yes, snails go slower than 1 mile per hour. Humans can walk slower than 1 mile per hour. Cars can crawl slower than 1 mile per hour in traffic. But something in me just shut down. I was new at relationships and didn't want to make her feel like I was correcting her. Or worse, being disrespectful. So I swallowed it, nodded, and let it go. Even though in my head I was screaming, that is not how any of this works. I tried to make a joke about snails traveling 1 mile per hour, but I could see that she genuinely believed what she was saying, and I didn't want to ruin the moment. It wasn't even worth a fight, or so I told myself. It became one of those tiny things, a little absurdity tucked into the fabric of the relationship that I ignored because I liked her, because I thought it didn't matter, because I was in love. Looking back now, it's ridiculous. It's not a huge event, nothing life-changing. It's just a tiny example of the kind of things I overlooked because I was enamored with someone for the first time. At the time, I was willing to let go of logic, reason, and even basic physics, just to keep the peace and keep her happy. Every argument, every contradiction, every slightly irrational moment, I would have normally challenged. I ignored it all. That slow car, that moment in traffic, has stayed with me, not because it was dramatic or life-altering, but because it's such a clear memory of what blind infatuation looks like. I can still picture her looking out the window, nodding as if this was common knowledge, and me sitting there, nodding along, completely silent, pretending that it made sense. We didn't last long after college, as many first relationships don't. By the end, I was able to look back and see all the little things I had ignored, not just the mile-per-hour comment, the stubbornness, the tiny contradictions, the moments where I should have spoken up but stayed quiet to avoid conflict. It all made sense in hindsight, the way young love often does. Even now, years later, I remember that car crawling along the campus street, the sun bouncing off the windshield, and her confident assertion that 1 mile per hour was the minimum. I laugh a little when I think about it, partly because it's absurd, and partly because I was so willing to suspend disbelief just to keep loving someone. That day was a lesson I didn't know I was learning at the time, tucked into a moment of frustration and misplaced logic, 1 mile per hour at a time.